Hey guys, Brian here with Better Chess Training, and I'm here with another 15-minute game in the ICC's 15-minute pool. And here I'm playing Boxer Man. I've played this person before in several time controls, so this should be an interesting game. He's a very tough opponent, and hopefully we'll have a good game against him. Now, this is not what I'm used to, but let's see what he's doing here. So, typically, I would play a Rubinstein French, but he's done something a little different with his move order here. So the bishop is here. So we need to see if there's any way to take advantage of that. Um, However, I still think my typical setup still works. I just need to be a little careful. I think he's lost some time. I think he's going to lose some time with this move. And he's playing kind of an odd opening here. Let's see, what are his ideas? Well, if I play knight to f6, then he will retreat it here. And then can I still play c5, which is my typical move? I can, I think. But I think the question is going to be how I'm going to develop this light square bishop, because typically I'd like to play something like b6. So let's see, let's just go ahead and do that. One thing I'm trying to do in my own play with these 15-minute games is not to overdo or not to, how should I say, uh, not to overthink the opening because I spend a lot of clock time. And I think in the middle game, when the position's tense, when a move you make can be the difference between winning and losing, is when you should spend that time. Okay, here bishop to e3 is threatening to take here. There's two choices that I can make, and that would be to either uh, take it or let him take here. So I have to decide how I want to do that. Um, I think what I can do is play. One idea is play queen b6 to attack the b2 pawn and also threaten to take here. Um, However, it's not the only move we can make. He can't win this pawn, so I could go ahead and play something like queen to. Um, well, you know what? This might be a good move. The reason why is it gets it off this file, so when this file opens, you can't exchange queens very easily. So let's go ahead and do that. It's attacking this pawn, and then if okay, so this is interesting. Um, he's choosing to ignore what my threats. I can take this pawn, and if he plays rook to um, let's see here. If he plays rook to b8, then I can play queen to a3. So what does that do in terms of my play here? So I could take this pawn, and I've been actually chastised by my coach a little bit about ignoring these types of pawns, but sometimes these could be poisonous too if it brings the queen out of the game, because then this rook is attacking this pawn here. So you know what? I think I'm going to develop first and let him think about that because right now it's still weak. If he plays rook to b8, it's not a big deal, I don't think. Later we'll analyze maybe it was a mistake not to take it. Okay. Um, okay, castle here. Because of his setup, it's not as dangerous as it might be if he still had, if his bishop were on this diagonal attacking the king side. So I'm not really super worried about that. Um, I don't want to take here because this actually helps him, whereas if he takes here, this would help me develop. So um, kind of want to leave the tension so he would exchange. Still have an issue developing this bishop, but we'll see if we can rectify that. I can still take here potentially. So one idea that I'm thinking is to maybe put some more pressure on the d4 pawn with something like e5 at this point. Normally, I like the pawn here if the bishop, if this light square bishop is coming down this diagonal, also to prevent. But the idea here might be that I have is that if I can play e5 and he whether he exchanges here or exchanges here, it helps to free my position. Also, it helps to free this bishop a little, which would be a good idea as well. And the other idea is that if he plays d5 here, this is interesting. So here, um, taking on b2, I think his idea is that a3, well, a3 is still available, but it gets a little more dicey in terms of getting the queen out. Oh, I see. So if I take on b2 here, he play rook to b1. If I play queen to a3, he plays rook to b3, and then you see here my queen is trapped. So my idea here is e5 with the threat of capturing here. And so if he, depending on which way he takes it, I think it helps free my position a little. He can take back with the knight. If he takes here, I take back with the bishop and trade these bishops. If he takes here, I take back with the knight, and now that gives me a little pressure here, and a lot of squares I can go to there. And then if he advances it, I can blockade it with something like bishop to d8. Not the greatest place for my bishop, but still an idea. And I could even have ideas of like sacrificing a pawn here to get the knight to e5 still. So kind of like that idea. I'm going to try it. And this brings up another topic that I've been wanting to talk about a little bit, which is knowing when to calculate things and how far to calculate things. And one of my thoughts here in this case, and I'm kind of doing some, I'm not telling you every single variation I'm thinking of in my head, but the idea is when the position is such that it's not super tactical, meaning the move, making a tactically inferior move will not lose the game, then I think it's okay to cut off the calculations a little sooner. The other thing too is that I should spend more time assessing the strategic aspects of the position unless it gets a little more tactical. So here I do need to be careful and beware of what can happen. Okay, he's going to push a3. This is not quite sure what his idea is here. I mean, I'm thinking he's undermining this pawn here, but the problem is that I can go ahead, now I can take this pawn, and I think I get it for free. These pawns can't be taken. I mean, they're protected enough. I think he does want to undermine here, but I think that's not really that big a deal. So I could play queen takes b2. He plays rook to b1, and then I just scooch back out. The only difference here is that I no longer have the b6 square to escape to, so I have to be careful still. I could play queen to c7, reinforcing both of these pawns as well. So let's take a look at this. Queen takes b2, rook to b1, queen to a3, and then what if he plays something like rook to b3? Okay, well, I'm still trapped, so actually that's not good. So I'm glad I checked. Okay, so let's play queen to c7. Now, if he takes here, I have to be a little careful because if I play knight takes e5, you can play something like bishop to e4. But I still think I'm okay with bishop to d6. And actually, and also I still have something like knight takes f3 check, and then I could do something. He has to do something now because I am threatening to take on d4 here. So if he does take d takes e5, I could play knight takes e5. If you play something like bishop to f4 with an apparent pin, okay, he's going to play here. Interesting. Um, Got to be a little careful here. He's got a few things coming on here. D6 in particular is a little dangerous. I have to be very careful. Queen to D8 looks okay. Not quite sure what his idea is. I think I can push his knight back after I retreat. Wait, Queen to D8 is really the only move. And I do have to be careful because he has this knight to D6. If, well, I'm covering it right now, but if when he opens his file, this queen will be protecting as well. Right now it looks okay. I think I can go ahead and play A5 here, or A6 if he gives me the chance. If he plays A6 himself, I can play rook to B8. So kind of pushing me back a little bit. I need to watch out for his threats. So A6 is, I think, is really the only move that I'm kind of worried about, because that's the only one that makes things a little awkward here. Because if he plays A6, I play rook to B8, which is I think the only move here. Actually, I have E4 as well. So if he plays A6, I can play E4. So and then he loses the bishop. So I actually have my own tactical threat that he has to be aware of. Boxerman is someone that I've played before in the Chess 90-30 League. So if you are on the Internet Chess Club, Chess 90-30 allows you a round robin tournaments, which are over several months. You schedule one game every 2 weeks, and they're pretty fun. You get some really good games because you have a lot of time to think. And I've played him a couple times. I think we are. I think I have an edge. I think I have 2 wins against him. Actually, I can check that. Nope, we are 1-1. So we've each won a game. Okay, so here we are, and he takes here, and my threat is to take with the knight, and it looks like he can take my queen here, but then I'm thinking just simply bishop takes f3 check will be fine. So, oh, I see. Well, knight takes e5, queen takes d8, rook takes d8, but actually bishop takes d8 should be fine also. But then he gets here. Okay. Let's see. The threat here is this knight to c7. Can I get a move in between here? I don't think I can. So I think I have to take here. Queen takes d8, and then this bishop has nowhere to go. Okay, now it's protected. And now I can play here first. Idea is if he takes here with the queen, which I'm expecting. And I want to play a6. The only thing here is, what if he plays his rook here? Then can I just, if he plays his rook here, then I'm no longer protecting c7. That's the only problem with that plan. Actually, I think it's, so my thought here is a6, and then one of his rooks to d8, then bishop to d7. And this leaves this on pre, but his knight's being attacked, so he has to retreat it, after which point I can move my rook to protect. Or even play something like b6 myself. Okay, let's try Let's try that. And that could be what he was thinking here. I have the two bishops now, so that's very helpful. And okay, rook to d1. My idea here is bishop to d7. And if he plays, when he retreats his knight, then I can put my queen on c6. So let's go ahead and do that. Or I can even put my bishop on c6 first. Oh no, I can't. I'm sorry, because the rook is well. Could that trade work? I don't think it works because he gets a knight. He would get an extra piece for that. So I think I have to take a turn to move my queen to c7, which I think is fine. And then I want to put my rooks. Typically, I want to put them on these open files, which I think I can do after that. Actually, c8 might be better because of bishop to f4. Then the idea would be maybe bishop. I'm threatening this skewer here. Okay, so knight there, and where do I want to put this? I want to, what I want to do, so looking at it from a piece placement, I want to put my queen here, and it protects this pawn. If I put it on c7, you can play bishop to f4, which is annoying, and then I'll have to just put it on c7 anyway. Yeah, I think this is good. And now I can do a couple things. My immediate threat is bishop to g4. And both under 6 minutes in time, so I do have to play efficiently. So I'll try to do that. And let's assess the position a little bit. Material-wise, we are even. The pawn structure is fairly symmetrical, and he's got this little nook here on b6, which I would love to do something about. He also is has his better placed rook at the moment, and the main difference in the position right now are these two bishops. So I need to get these guys active, and what's helpful is that he doesn't really have any points of to root his knight on at the moment. However, he might try something like knight to a4 and knight to b6. If he does that, I might have to take with my bishop because that would just be very unpleasant. But let's see. He should see the threat and play something like h3. If he does play something like h3, which he does, I can play bishop to c6. So that would be fine as well. Let's see here. That would be a better placement for this bishop in any case. Then I was kind of expecting this, and I kind of like it. The idea here now is that this queen is kind of blocking the scope of this bishop. How to take advantage of that, I'm trying to think of here, but I think I might want to just improve my rook placement. Let's see here. Maybe first by moving my queen here. I'm trying to see if it can be attacked anyway. Not really seeing too much in the way of that. but it does expose it to being annoyed here by this rook. Let's see here. Well, let's do that. And then maybe I could trade queens here. If he does move his rook here, then I just go ahead and move my bishop here to attack his queen. And if he tries to move his bishop out of the way, I could win his queen, of course, but I don't think he would do that. So the whole point right now of doing this is to clear it away for these rooks, because my rook doesn't really need to be here anymore. I'm not really worried about that. Also, it does have a useful purpose here in helping to cover this square so these knights have less places to go. Okay, so he's got, oh, did he just blunder? Did he just blunder? So knight takes e4, knight takes e4, queen takes e4. So he's just, looks like he's just blundered a knight, I think. Just make sure I'm not doing anything silly here. I think he's just blundered a knight, guys. And queen takes, threatening mate. He has to exchange. And I am up a piece, my friends, but I only have 4 minutes to take advantage of it. Okay, that is fine. Let's play, he's going to get this pawn back, but that's okay. I'm going to grab this pawn right here. Actually, I could grab either of these pawns, but okay, he's going to block there. And what should I do? Should I defend this pawn? No, I'm going to let it go because I want to take control of the file here. So look at what I'm doing, guys. I am up a piece, so I'm trying to exchange with him. He has to, well, if he doesn't exchange with me, then I could get my rook back here. So here he's trying to avoid that, and that is okay. I can actually, let's see here. I'm letting this pawn go. I'm just going to get my king into the game, I think. Let me check here. Oh, have a tactic, guys. Rook takes and rook to d1 check. He's going to move here, and then I'm going to fork. And he resigns. Good game. And that is it. So we had some strategic play to try to get an advantage. I think the position was pretty even, but then he made a counting mistake. So sometimes these games are, especially at our level, at amateur levels, you know, you want to play well strategically, of course, but you're not going to see these, you know, Karpov-like squeeze plays where both players play, you know, very good chess, and then Karpov just makes these tiny positional advantages. Sometimes you might see that, but oftentimes, you know, even if we build towards that, a lot of times, you know, one of us will make a mistake. Sometimes it is me, and this time we were lucky because it was the opponent. Okay, we can take a look at that, and I hope you enjoyed the game. Okay, guys, let's review the game a little. First thing we want to take a look at here is the opening, and so I went ahead and looked this up in my database, and just found that in this particular position, the most common move is what we played, which is d takes e4, and after bishop takes e4, we talked about knight to f6. That actually is the most common move played, and it's very logical, attacking this bishop and forcing it to retreat to f6, which is the move. Now, as we talked about in the French, and as I played in the game, c5 is the most common move played here, and it's a strong move, I think. And White plays as similarly as he did in the game with that knight to e2. So that's kind of that idea here. And I think part of it is controlling these light squares after something like knight to g3, for example, but also reinforcing this pawn. And the whole point here behind playing this as opposed to what I played, which I do with the Rubinstein French, is that now knight to c6 can be played. And we're not fearing this exchange here because it's a loss of time on this bishop that's moved quite a bit, as well as gaining the two bishops. So this is typically what's played here, and this is known as the Schlechter Variation. So we're not going to get too much into the theory, but that's just some of the idea behind the opening. So we learned something today, and that's always good. Let's take a look at another position. Okay, at this point in the game, um, I was questioning whether it was safe to take the B2 pawn. And something told me that it might have been dangerous. And um, usually something tactical. So let's take a look at that. And what I was looking at was after queen takes b2, rook to b1, and then queen to a3. So that was the general idea. Now, he actually can just win this pawn back if he wants here. And after those exchanges, um, it's probably pretty even, although it is a little annoying to have this rook here on the 7th rank already. So with that in mind, this would be something to reject. However, white has an even nastier option here, and that is knight to b5. So it's hitting the queen here, as well as this c7 square here. And by the way, I just figured out how to do these arrows, so hopefully I won't overdo it. But the idea is that it's going to fork these here, and there's no way for me to really defend this. I mean, I can, I guess. I can play something like queen to a5. Let's take a look at that. And after he blocks, I can't take this knight. Okay. And if I retreat to queen to b6, then he plays bishop to f4. And now he's got both of these guys staring at this, as well as this potential discovered attack. So white gets a great initiative here and probably will win some material if I took that b2 pawn. So it was a good decision not to do that. Okay, the next position that I want to look at is this one right here, where I made the decision to push this pawn to e5 to put pressure here. One thing that I felt was an option for white was this d5, and I analyzed a little bit what we should do about it. And at first, during the game, I was thinking I could just play something like this. The only problem is that after a5, if I were to go to queen to c7 like I did during the game, then knight to b5 is very awkward. And after queen to b8, knight takes d6, queen takes d6, then I think things get just very uncomfortable after knight to g3, which covers the e4 square. My position just looks a little awkward here. I'm never gonna. It's gonna be hard to get to this pawn. He's got a space advantage. These pawns are just kind of hanging out there. I don't think he's necessarily winning, but I definitely think he has an edge. So let's go back. I did a little more analysis from that position, and instead of blockading with the bishop, and this is actually a good general principle to know. This type of thing with the isolated pawn. It's not exactly isolated, but with this pawn here is often well blockaded with a knight. So white can play as he did in the game and attack my queen. And then the idea here is to not go to d8, because then he can just push his pawn on. If I go to d8, then he plays d6, and that is just not pleasant for me. After bishop takes f6, a6 undermines here with this bishop lining up with my rook. So let's go back, and instead I would have to go back to b8. And from here, I think white is comfortable. Definitely has this space advantage, has a little more room for his pieces, but I don't think he's necessarily winning. He played reinforced the pawn here with c4. I can blockade and try to trade off here. And then after these trades, then I don't think it's really that much of an advantage. Although I think white does have a more comfortable position here. So that was one option. Let's go back to here, and let's actually take it a move back. Instead of playing e5, which allows this, I could have taken here right away. And then if he takes back with the bishop, um, I think at this point, trading these dark square bishops is not necessarily a good idea, or it just gets a little awkward because he still has this a5 move here. So instead, I could retreat my queen. C7 is always a square that I'm looking to do that to. And if he plays here, now I can actually play queen to b8. And actually, that would be the best move because if I play queen to d8, then he can just snag this pawn right here. And then if I tried to do something like that, then of course it is, there's no way I could block this bishop. So queen to b8 is necessary. And we could develop here to g3 as we've talked about earlier. And now I do think this position is pretty even. I can start to fight back a little with a6. And then after he retreats, I could even look at things like developing my knight here to try to exchange, because this dark square bishop is very dangerous at this point. Or even maybe something like this, which maybe isn't great, but is not horrible either. So those are just some options. I think it's good to examine these positions when there's a lot of tension between the pieces, and just make sure that your analysis was fine. E5 was okay, I think, but I think maybe taking on D4 might have been the more sensible move to make. Okay, the final position I want to look at is towards the end of the game when my opponent made the fatal mistake losing a piece. And in this position here, he played knight g to e4, which was the losing move. However, after some analysis and with the help of the chess engine, which I don't like to use too much, but in this case it was very helpful because don't think I would have found this move. He plays an interesting knight to f5. And so the idea here is manifold, I guess, and one of them is to play something like queen to g5, attacking for a checkmate, and also attacking this bishop, which is one of the protectors of the c5 pawn. So let's follow some analysis here. If I were just to play some type of reinforcing move like rook to e8, then queen to g5 threatens checkmate, and after a move like bishop to f8, well, this pawn is now hanging because I cannot leave here. So that's definitely a little bit dangerous. But there's some other options. After queen to g5, I could play g6. And in this particular position, he can take here with check. And if I take back here with the queen, and then now he's got bishop takes c5 also because of the overloading of the queen. So you can see that there. If I go ahead and take it, then he just takes here, and he's doing well. Actually, I'm sorry, I can't do that because the queen is covering that. So bishop takes c5 actually will win material, and so after queen to e5, keeping an eye here, you can take, and then this is very awkward. Okay, after rook to e6, he just can exchange here, and he is a solid pawn up. So that is something that he could have done in any case. Let's go back one more time because another line here that the computer gave me was to force some exchanges with knight to e4. After knight takes e7 check, taking off this bishop, queen takes e7, he now plays knight to d5, okay, forcing this exchange, okay, because you can see here I have to keep in contact here. If I play a move like this, then there is actually does this fork work? There's this fork, which could be quite annoying, but you could even just play something like c4, and this knight is looking good. Okay, So instead, I'd have to exchange it off. And after the rook takes, we can see now there's more pressure here on c5. See how this a pawn restricts my b pawn from helping out. And um, here at this point, you know, maybe I might want to contest the file. But then he's got this fork. So instead, I have to put my rook here to protect e5. So that is kind of the threat here with this rook here. Um, and he can then double on the file, and now he's got a solid advantage. He's threatening definitely some good moves like rook to d7, which would be very unpleasant for me. You'd be winning this pawn at the very least. So we can see here at another option here, and so in this particular position, the assessment is that he can gain a little bit of an advantage with knight to f5. Although I think that would be a tough move for him to see. Obviously, he didn't see it during the game. It would be a tough move for me to see. So, anyways, there's some analysis of the game, and I hope that was helpful for you as it was for me. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please press the like button. And I hope you enjoyed, I did a little more analysis after the game to try to learn from my mistakes as well as my opponent's mistakes. And if you found that helpful, let me know in the comments. And if you're new to this channel, I upload twice a week. And the main goal is to try to create videos that will help you improve your chess as well as my own and also have a little fun. So if you like that, think about subscribing, and I hope to see you soon. Good luck with your chess.